After 2 years of fighting in Ukraine, even the most ardent pro-Ukrainian military experts from numerous Western analytical centers began to admit that the armed forces of Ukraine suffered a crushing defeat on the battlefield. Trying to understand the main reason for the success of Russian troops on the battlefield, many military analysts noted 3 factors: combat aviation, artillery, and electronic warfare systems. In particular, French military expert Xavier Rufer, in his article for the internet news resource Atlantico, recognized the high efficiency of Russian electronic warfare systems on the battlefield. At the same time, he noted that Russian electronic warfare systems are capable of disabling not only all modern military targets of Western countries, including naval and air bases of the North Atlantic Alliance and the Pentagon, but also ordinary civilian facilities. In addition, it has been proven that the high radiation of Russian electronic warfare systems negatively affects not only the electronics of Western combat aircraft, but also the pilots themselves. In the last 20-30 days alone, dozens of cases have been recorded where NATO pilots complained of loss of communication and discomfort with ongoing severe headaches during flights even several hundred kilometers from the borders of the Russian Federation. According to the NATO pilots, such electronic upsets and headaches appear even when they meet Russian fighters during patrol. All this indicates that even Russian combat planes are equipped with fairly powerful electronic warfare systems that can negatively impact the electronics of NATO fighter jets and the pilots themselves. Currently, the West has no effective means of countering Russian electronic warfare systems. At the same time, NATO and the Pentagon are concerned about the fact that Russian engineers are constantly improving existing electronic warfare systems, and are actively working to create new generation systems. It is reliably known that on the battlefield in Ukraine, the Russian military has begun testing the latest electronic warfare systems. It is reported that these new generation systems were created based on the experience of combat operations in Ukraine, and can significantly strengthen the Russian army's military potential. Russian electronic warfare systems continue to delight experts and instill fear in the Western military. According to experts, long-range Russian electronic warfare systems could turn multi-role F-35 fighters into heaps of metal and demoralize pilots. F-35 stealth fighters demonstrate radar visibility and unreliability near Russian borders. NATO pilots receive mental trauma from non-lethal encounters with electronic warfare systems and fighter jets of the Russian aerospace forces. American F-35 pilots complain about malfunctions in onboard systems and loss of communication over the Baltic and Black Seas. About 500 kilometers from the Russian borders, electronic warfare interference begins to suppress all the electronics of American fighter jets. According to experts, this is the result of the operation of the Murmansk BN complex, which is capable of burning out the electronics of American and NATO combat aircraft at a distance of up to 5,000 kilometers. Such electronic warfare systems can turn the F-35 multipurpose fighter jets into heaps of metal and demoralize the pilots. Recently, an F-35 pilot of the Italian Air Force needed the help of a psychologist after meeting in the sky with the Russian Su-30SM fighter and its electronic warfare equipment over the Baltic Sea. An Italian officer said that some of the F-35 systems were out of order. I was at the limit. Fear so constrained me that it even reached my toes. I understood that the Russian pilot was testing my capabilities and the capabilities of my aircraft. After returning to the airbase, the Italian pilot was diagnosed with a nervous breakdown. The officer was suspended from flights and sent home. NATO pilots are not used to the air superiority of a potential enemy, which is why they often complain and suffer mental trauma along the patrol route. Note that the R-27EA guided air-to-air missile, with a range of up to 130 kilometers, is much more dangerous than non-lethal maneuvers and electronic warfare systems of the Su-30SM fighter jet. The Russian Su-30SM multipurpose fighter jet was designed to achieve real air superiority, capable of taking on board up to 8 tons of ammunition to destroy air, surface, ground targets, day and night, in simple and difficult weather conditions, when exposed to active and passive enemy jamming. The Su-30SM is the most numerous type of modern fighter jet of the Russian aerospace forces and naval aviation. There are more than 130 aircraft in service. The dangerous expansion of NATO to the east, the growth of foreign military infrastructure in the Baltic countries and the Black Sea region are forcing Moscow to act asymmetrically, to create the latest systems for the destruction and suppression of a potential enemy. The armed forces of the Russian Federation receive hypersonic missiles, an unusual means of neutralizing threats, technologically significantly superior to the strike capabilities of the troops and forces of the collective West. If the Kasutra 4 electronic warfare system is capable of suppressing the onboard equipment of the enemy's air force and navy ships at a distance of up to 300 kilometers, the Murmansk BN complex can disable enemy combat equipment at a distance of thousands of kilometers. In addition, Murmansk BN is capable of conducting electronic reconnaissance in an automatic mode, detecting radio signals of a potential enemy, that is, jamming communications between command posts, enemy aircraft and ships. Such means make it possible to neutralize the strike weapons of the United States and NATO, because a combat aircraft or ship without communication, GPS navigation, operational information becomes just a target that is easy to destroy. In the future, electronic warfare means will play a major role in military conflicts of various levels of intensity. Electronic warfare systems also will be used in outer space. Today the mobile complexes Murmansk BN are in service in the northern, Baltic, and Black Sea fleets, reliably covering the borders of Russia from the Kola Peninsula, Kaliningrad, and the Crimea. A fantastic range of 5,000 kilometers provides reliable, duplicated control of a huge operational space, all of Europe and a significant part of the Atlantic Ocean, half of Africa, the Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf, the countries of Central and South Asia to India and China. Kasutra 4, Murmansk BN and other Russian electronic warfare systems are simply destroying the network-centric concepts of warfare of the Pentagon and NATO. There are no analogues in the world of Russian long-range electronic warfare systems. It is no coincidence that at the National Defense Forum in the United States, Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall said that one of the main trump cards of the Pentagon military aviation needs a serious reduction, decommissioning of aircraft, helicopters, and unmanned aerial vehicles, which are not capable of being useful in confronting a high-tech enemy. Despite active sales of F-35 fighters to the U.S. allies, this aircraft has not been successfully tested at the Pentagon and is not approved for mass production in the United States to this day, and is quite vulnerable outside of commercials. The technological lag of the Pentagon is no longer a secret to anyone. Let me remind you that even the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is paradoxically inclined towards solving military political problems exclusively by diplomatic means, even in such hot spots as Ukraine and Taiwan. Obviously, Washington seriously fears the outcome of the likely and dramatic for the United States high-tech wars. The Pentagon's concern has also increased due to the information that the Russians have also begun developing a completely new long-range electronic warfare system, which will significantly exceed the performance and capabilities of the Murmansk BN. Well, judging by this information, it becomes clear that the Russian military intends to continue to maintain the status of the Russian army as the owner of the world's most powerful electronic warfare systems.